Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has said in the past that they would ensure that no single community would bear the brunt of the early phase-out of coal. That makes for a good soundbite, but it doesn't match the reality of the situation. The Coal Community Transition Fund is a good first step, but with some communities facing economic impacts in the hundreds of millions of dollars, it's barely a drop in the bucket, and coal communities are wondering what comes next. To the Premier, will you commit to giving these communities all the support they need when it comes to transition?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we want coal communities to continue to be places where workers can earn a good living. And it is a priority for us in this government, and that's why we are currently making sure that these workers have all the support that they need. You know, we're calling on the federal government as well to step up and pull their weight in supporting these communities. We provided workers with direct funding to help bridge their income to re-employment or retirement. We are covering all the angles on this issue, and happy to work with the member if he has suggestions to help us going forward.
First supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, our caucus had the opportunity to speak with representatives from Parkland County. They laid out the difficulties that the coal phase-out poses for them, and it was pretty bleak. But they weren't there to complain. They were there to discuss solutions. They laid out several ways that the Parkland community could diversify and mitigate the loss of revenue. One piece was upgrading their highway infrastructure, a project that currently sits on the unfunded list. To the same minister, since your government accelerated the coal phase-out and pulled the rug out from under Parkland County, will you also accelerate their infrastructure funding and help them get back on their feet?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question and for his engagement with Parkland County. I, in fact, grew up in Parkland County, and we have engaged with that community, the honourable member for Economic Development and Trade, through his Coal Transition Task Force, engaged with that community and others in Hannah and elsewhere to make sure that that $40 million fund, Mr. Speaker, meets the immediate needs of workers. Now, of course, there are other community investments that we can make. For example, we are looking at our options around community power projects, Mr. Speaker, and how communities can avail themselves of that. And of course, there is infrastructure investments that we can and are making.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Second supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, climate change is real, it's man-made, and it's a serious issue that we need to address. However, we need to make sure that any plan to address the climate change doesn't leave Albertans in the lurch. Decisions like coal phase-out, changes to electricity systems, and the carbon tax have real economic consequences. But there is little to no information available to the public about the total economic impact that this government's climate leadership plan has. To the same minister, will you commit to a detailed Alberta-wide assessment of the economic impacts of the climate leadership plan, whether they're positive or negative?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, the Climate Progress Report was posted on the Alberta Environment and Parks website in December of 2017, which is a very detailed analysis of actions taken so far and actions that are planned for the future, Mr. Speaker. One of those actions that we have taken is making sure the federal government took action on coal to gas conversions for the communities that the honourable member has visited. The previous government did not allow for coal plants to convert to natural gas, which saves jobs and keeps those plants running for a lot of those workers he's talking about. We got that job done, Mr. Speaker.